Hello and welcome to episode 134 of the Arena Regulars podcast. I'm Zach,
And I'm Jeff.
and we're a source for drunken Magic the Gathering arena content.
That's right. Just a couple of regular guys drinking some irregular beers and talking about Magic the Gathering, in particular, the online client MTG Arena.
Ooh, Jeff, we got one of my favorite episodes this week. It is our pre-game episode because the Lost Caverns of Ixalan, the newest Magic set, comes out next week. The pre-release is this weekend. So next week on Tuesday, it will be coming out on Arena. So we got to get ready and check out all these new cards that are coming to the client. But first, each episode we drink a beer. We rate it on a scale from bronze to mythic, just like the tiers in Arena. So with that, Jeff, what's on tap?
I'm super excited about this. I don't know if you're like this, but I certainly am. I get poached by Instagram ads all the time. Like,
Yeah.
of any platform where I actually follow through on making purchases through the ads the most, Instagram is like by far. It's like everything else, I just never buy anything on it. And Instagram, I'm like excited. I'm like scrolling past what my friends are posting to see the ads because it's always stuff I want. Um,
Oh
so they
man.
had this one on there, and this is Express Brewing. This is their easy drinking blonde. But the whole idea behind Express Brewing is that it's craft beer for $2.50 a tall can, $2.50. Now, some of you who don't live in Canada might be thinking that doesn't sound that cheap. Um, I don't know. It is really cheap for
Yeah.
here. Well, especially Ontario. Um, it's basically unheard of. Like, because the way it works here is you kind of have to sell through the government if you're going to have that's the biggest way, I guess. And once you are in what's called the LCBO, the Liquor Control Board of Ontario, they basically charge a price or they have to take a cut, and then you're actually not allowed to undercut them.
Mhm.
So if you get in the LCBO, which you want to be because that's where everybody buys from, you then essentially have to raise your prices even if you didn't want to, so that you you can't sell your beer for less than they're selling it for, essentially.
Mhm.
So these guys kind of said that's nonsense. They started Express Brewing. They're not in the LCBO. They're, I think, pretty much just the like you can only have this beer delivered.
Mhm.
There's no physical location for you to go
Oh,
get it.
interesting.
And so that's why they don't have that overhead. And so that's the business model, is like we're express we're express brewing. We send beer to you that
Mhm.
lets us keep the beer cheap
With free
and
delivery as well.
with free delivery. Yeah. So I
Mhm.
bought a 6 pack from them on this Instagram ad. It was 16, well, $15 plus
Mhm.
tax. So it was like 16 something, which is true to their word of 250 a tall can. And I'm excited to crack into it because if it's actually good, then
Get more and more and
we're,
more.
we're onto something here.
Yeah, because then I'll also probably jump onto it because I have seen this as well, and I was like, I just don't know how good it is. And so,
Yeah,
if you've also been thinking this because you've been seeing these ads, tonight is the night we're going to tell you if this beer is worth it. Hashtag
that's
not
right.
sponsored. We didn't contact them, and maybe we should have, but oh well. Anyway.
Yeah. I read about them a little bit. I think they're essentially like kind of like a ghost kitchen, but the beer version. They brew out of
Oh,
Brock Street. But the guy who makes it is like a professional brewer, knows what he's doing, and then the other partners are in the shipping business. So
gotcha.
uh, um, kind of makes sense where they landed on this one, on this company.
Well, sweet. Let's crack it open.
Yeah, so it's called Easy Drinking Blonde. It's a blonde ale.
Oh, right. It's 4.3%.
Yeah. So yeah, it's blonde and it's easy drinking.
Yes. Oh, okay. Jeff, we do have some magic news. I already said the new set is coming out next week. I believe it's November 14th onto Arena, which is wonderful.
Jeez,
Yeah,
soon.
very, very soon. Also, Wizards reminded us that Cons of Tarkir is coming to Arena too, which which is really exciting. I forgot.
Hmm.
Like, obviously, there's new sets coming out, and we're not really talking about Cons of Tarkir this week, but on December 12th, the entire block of cons will be on Arena, so we can draft. Sorry, not block, just set, just the cons set. Um, so we'll be able to draft cons the way it was intended, I guess. We still don't know if fetch lands are in it or not, but that will be figured out. Though we do have some changes that came with this. What the real announcement was, it wasn't necessarily, "Hey, don't forget cons." It was, "We're changing some ways we're depicting cards and some creature types," which is very interesting because it didn't sound like this was something anyone was talking about at all. Um, so basically, um, the biggest one is that they're changing the art for a bunch of Cons of Tarkir cards. Any card that has the name Rakshasa in it, usually depicted some sort of cat demon. Um, However, culturally, a Rakshasa is a demon in like Hindu and Buddhism culture. And apparently, hearing this on Twitter from Shivam, it does not represent a cat at all. And that is not, that's just something someone made up in the 70s in a like D&D book, I think. They just made a picture of a cat demon, and then it's been in fantasy ever since. And so Wizards is deciding they want to change that, which is
Hmm.
interesting. Whether you fall on the side of like, do you think that our game needs to have a bunch of like cultural sensitivity or not, doesn't necessarily matter. I think in the end, this was a cool way to learn about the world. I would have never known anything about this unless this happened. And I didn't even know what this was or anything about it without Magic in general. So the fact that I can like learn about other cultures through a game that I like and it's all fun, I think was pretty cool. So I'm on board with all these changes that they're doing. Um,
Yeah, same. So to clarify, cards that are named Rakshasa will no longer be cats, and they'll get art that reflects that.
Correct.
Yeah, because I skimmed the article very quickly, and I was like, my brief interpretation was like, oh, were they not technically cats before? There was something else, so they're going to change the creature type to be cats. I don't
Mm-mm.
get this. And then I
No.
didn't pay any more attention. But
Yeah.
now that you've explained it to me, I'm like, it was the opposite. Got
Yeah.
it.
So they
Yeah,
will only be demons, and they will be depicting something not cat-like, more demon-like.
right.
Then there's a bunch of depictions for, whatever, hundreds of years in Hindu culture of what a Rakshasa looks like. So, um, very interesting. The same thing is happening for, we also have some creature type erratas going around. So, Nagas will now be called snakes because that's what they are. And it's the same thing, though that word Naga is also used in Hindu culture and it is more sacred, as well as the biggest one is that the word tribal will no longer be on cards anymore. You know that there's a tribal
Yeah.
subtype to instants and sorceries or different things like that. They're going to change that to the word kindred, as to be sensitive to anyone who is part of a tribe if that's a really huge part of your culture. Um, I think primarily that's like a Native American kind of thing or different aspects to that. Any any sort of thing that has actually been in the works for a very long time. People have been complaining about the word tribal in Magic for uh, at least a decade. Um,
Oh, good to change it then. I mean,
yeah,
like, who cares what they call the
hmm
mechanic?
yeah,
Uh, unless
um,
it's offending people, then change it.
yeah. It also goes with the words that they would use uh, in the actual. I think this is where they got this is that the people making cards started to call deck types. They called it typal. So any creature deck that focused around one type of creature type, instead of saying the word tribal, they would say typal as like a as their little change, which I always thought was kind of uh, sloppy and not great. Um,
It doesn't even sound good.
It's like
Typo.
close because it's like, oh, but you're still saying tribal. Anyway, so I don't actually know for sure if they're trying to change the overarching thing to be like I'm playing a elf kindred deck, if that's what it's supposed to be called now, or it will just be elf cards that would before have said tribal, now say kindred. I'm still a little confused on exactly where we're landing on that, um, and
The
what the
thing is
community will
like
say. But
the thing is like Wizards can't affect that other than what they call decks in their broadcast, and they would call it like Abzan Elves. It wouldn't be called
mhm.
Abzan Elf Tribal. So I don't know if that distinction's ever actually gonna be made by them.
Yeah, we will see. It'll probably be in the more of like explaining of the deck. So we might not hear Merfolk
Right.
Tribal or Vampire Tribal anymore. It might just
Like
be, but also
Kindred.
you could say Kindred. You could also just say Vampire deck, and you understand.
Right.
Like I'm playing an Elf
Like
deck.
to me, the word tribal just means when you're talking about any deck
Hmm.
that is
Focused
focused on a
around
single
creature
creature
types.
type, and I'm not
Hmm.
trying to talk about a specific one.
Yeah.
That's the only time that word would tend to come up.
Hmm.
And I'm happy to just use kindred instead if
Yeah.
I can beat like 20 years of using the other word out of
Yeah,
my
which will take a little bit of getting used to. The only reason I'm really bringing this up is because obviously I'm a straight white man. If you've seen us on YouTube, Jeff is also a straight white man. So I want to just very explicitly say that I'm on board for these things. You know, being inclusive always just is like an upside to me. It doesn't really seem like there's a big downside besides me learning new words. Learning new words can be hard sometimes,
exactly.
but I'm going to try my best. And yeah, I don't really see a point in fighting this. So cool. Anyway, that's all the important things to just say and do. Okay, Jeff, let's actually get into the episode and talk about some cards. We have been putting off talking about Lost Caverns of Ixalan for the last several weeks, so I'm very excited to actually get into it this episode. So, as I adjust my mic, with no further ado, could you explain what pre-games are and what actually, you know what? Just get into our no pass list because that's the most important thing. And what where we are right now.
Yeah, so pre-games are us looking at the set before we've played with any of the cards. As Zach mentioned at the top, pre-releases this weekend. So obviously we haven't played with any of these, which means all opinions should be taken with a grain of salt. It's
Hmm.
mostly just about excitement. The no pass list, though, is something that we do on this show. We believe strongly in something called rare drafting.
Hmm.
If you're like us, now not everyone is like this, but if you're like us, you're going to start the set by drafting a lot to build up your collection, and then you're going to move into uh, constructed formats. That's just like the ebb and flow of how I play. It's how you play.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of people kind of work that way
Yeah.
because drafting is the best way to build your collection.
Hmm.
Um, if you have literally zero interest in ever playing constructed, you can disregard what I'm about to say. But if
Hmm.
you like constructed, then what we believe is, contrary to what a lot of people on the internet will tell you, the percentage change of taking a slightly better card for your deck in a situation over a rare that you know you're going to want to play in constructed
Hmm.
is actually not worth it. So to put that in the positive spin, you should take the rare that you know you're going to play instead of a card that might be slightly better for your draft deck in the event that you are actually interested in playing constructed if one of your goals is to build your collection. So
Hmm.
that's our no pass list. Stems from that idea. We don't want to be in a situation where we're sitting there being like, oof, is this a card I really want? Or should I take the card that's better for my deck? We like to iron that out ahead of time. Just say, you know what? Here's a list of cards that if I see them in a draft, I will just take it. It
Hmm.
removes a lot of your mental burden during the draft. It lets you take a chill pill, sit back for like a minute. That's always nice, and just read the cards. That's usually what I do is I like click the creature land and then I read all the cards. I'm just like, whoops, that took a load off. I'm not reading all
Yeah.
the uncommons to try to pick one. Um, yeah, so you just have this list. These are
Hmm.
like, hey, if I see these, just take them. Don't worry about it. It doesn't mean you can't rare draft anything else in the moment. It just
Hmm.
means like putting a little bit of forethought into it really lets you relax during these early drafts where you don't know what any of the cards do.
Hmm.
And it's been huge for me. So
Yeah.
that's why we always try to like talk about it during these shows because it's just nice.
Yeah. It's also that you want to know exactly which rares you want to draft. Now, rare drafting anything is a strategy people have used, and that is
Right.
usually the one that's a little bit more frowned upon. But if you know that card is something you're actually going to use, is important to make the distinction. Like
Yeah.
maybe you're not gonna play like some random, maybe like the Millennium Calendar or something that seems like really cool and funny, but like, do I need this really? I mean, like maybe it's on your no pass list and you really want to play a Millennium Calendar deck, which we'll talk about that card in a minute, but it would be the kind of thing that's like, I don't think I need to put that on my list because um, I don't think I'm going to use a wild card slot on it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Um, because as a reminder, wild cards are the real currency of Arena. It might look like it's gems and gold, but it's actually wild cards. And so those are very, very important to hoard and use very specifically because you never want to be in a situation where you have zero wild cards, rare and mythic wild cards. Commons and uncommons don't really matter. But anyway,
Yeah.
um,
You'll get enough of
yeah.
those.
And we pound this into the ground because you do only have like 30 seconds to make your decision. So you need to have it ready on your arm.
Yeah.
Um,
Like I know you're thinking, oh, I know which rares I want, but it's gonna come up. You're gonna be in a blue-black deck, and there's an
mhm,
awesome blue and or black uncommon, and then a rare that you kind of want. You have 25 seconds.
mhm.
You're gonna be like, which one do I take? You're probably gonna take the uncommon that's good for your deck, and then be like, dang,
Dang
I
it.
really wish I had that Cavern of Souls.
Yeah. Or well, yeah, if you're passing up the Cavern of Souls. Um, which, this is a
Then you don't play Kindred decks.
yeah,
That's all
exactly.
it is. Yeah.
Um, so Jeff, let's get into it. We aren't going to explain like go through all of our no pass lists, but we do write them down, and we write them down in a place where both Jeff and I can see them, so we know the other one actually did it. Um,
Yeah.
but then we can also
A
ask
little bit of
questions.
accountability.
Yeah, a little bit. But the number one thing you want to do when you're looking at a set, and everyone should do this, and you don't get to choose whether this is on your no pass list or not. We're telling you you have to put this
Yeah,
on your no pass list.
it's on it.
And if you're not, then you're not a regular on Arena. I don't know. You don't get the regular badge
Yeah.
unless you
Yeah.
know that this is important. And Jeff already alluded to it earlier, but rare dual lands. Very, very important. You always want to put these on your no pass list. All of them. Like, don't just pick the ones you want for decks. You want all of them. Because the importance of building a new deck or going in and copy pasting a deck from online, net decking. We're super, super pro net decking. It's great to try out other people's lists, do all that stuff. The last thing you want to do is spend wildcards on your lands. You want to already have all of your lands, so you don't have to worry about that. And drafting is the perfect place to do it because people pass those all the time. Once they have them,
Yeah.
they tend not to pick them anymore.
No, yeah, you get these. Like,
Hmm.
I'll have drafts where I'll pick up 4 or 5 of them,
Mm.
and then I'll go 6-3 or whatever it is, like,
6-3. Wow, holy, that's great.
or
That's amazing.
yeah,
Um,
that's like the perfect draft. I'm
yeah,
not saying that always happens. Sometimes you pick 5 of them and you go 3-3. But
yeah. If you go, I'm gonna say if you pick 4 or 5 like rare dual lands and you go 3-3, you won. Like
I'm
you
happy with
won.
that. Yeah,
That
I'm
was
happy with
amazing.
that.
Like,
Exactly. So it lowers the bar for how well you actually have to do in the draft, which is also a fun way to think about it. But yeah, no matter what you're doing, if you're playing a lot of constructed and you like to try different decks,
mhm,
this allows you to do that. Just make sure you're picking these up. Because like Zach said, they're almost free sometimes. Like they're not good and limited,
mhm.
or they're not great. They're fine.
Yes.
They're usually not worth a pick if you're doing the whole spiky, I want to pick the best card for my deck in every
Mhm,
pack thing. And so you'll get these like at the end of packs, and
mhm.
you can get a bunch of them. So just pick these up. Don't worry about your 23rd common being better than
Hmm.
your 24th common for your deck. Uh, just pick up the creature lands. And something you were mentioning, like it's nice to just take a deck list and not have to worry about it. You have the lands for it. Um, the other thing is I see all the time people building their own decks, and then they're like, "Ooh,
Hmm.
well, I don't have Restless Cottage, so I'm going to play Jungle Hollow in its spot just to test if the deck works." That doesn't work. Your deck is losing because your lands are bad. And so you
Hmm.
don't actually know if the deck idea, like the core of the deck, works
Hmm.
because you're losing to your mana.
Hmm.
And so just having all of the rare duels, you have your Restless Cottage when you're playing standard, or you have like all your shock lands, or at least
Hmm.
most
For
of them, if you
Explorer
if you
and
want to play Explorer, because
hmm.
the common dual lands are not a proper substitute. That's like the biggest downgrade your deck can possibly take.
Hmm.
So you could have an awesome deck, but because you're playing Jungle Hollow instead of Overgrown Doom, like you're gonna lose.
You you
So
you could lose.
yeah,
It's just it. It's really frustrating, and we've talked about this on the show a few times. That like, if only Wizards just made the core resource of the game all common and
yeah,
uncommon, that would be amazing. But for whatever reason, they've decided years ago that rare is the way to go, and they're just not going to change that anytime soon, or probably ever, because it sells packs. I'm sure is really the reason. Um, but it's really difficult to brew decks, like you were just saying, on Arena because people don't want to spend like resources on their mana base. I felt the same way. It's the biggest thing when you start to play Magic that like lands are not exciting, and
yeah.
they're not really, but they're kind of like eating your vegetables. But like once you have a good foundation and a good base, then you get to start to have fun. So that's why I get really excited when there are good lands I can collect because I know I'm getting something worthwhile. Like I don't have to take a
Yeah.
shot on a random card, like hit the mother load or something crazy that like I'm going to spend a bunch of wild cards on that might not be great. When I can just take a rare land that I'm definitely going to play. Like you are going to play the rare lands. So that is why we hit it so hard. And that's the biggest soapbox we're going to have this episode.
Yeah.
Besides maybe this next card, which is also a rare land.
Yeah.
Which
The
Jeff
other the other
also
rare
talked
one.
about. Um, but Cavern of Souls. Do you want to give us a little rundown of how great this card is? Because I've never played with this card. I've never played against this card. I haven't been around this card. Um,
Yeah, so Cavern of Souls is if you've never encountered the card, it comes into play. You can choose a creature type.
mhm,
Um, it can tap for colorless, or it can tap for mana of any color as long as you're casting that creature type with it.
mhm.
With the huge humdinger here, the spell you cast from this cannot be countered.
That's the money.
So just think about, if any of you out there played mono white and you have a ton of humans in your deck or whatever, just think about how many times you're sitting there and you're like, I have my Thalia, but my Grixis opponent, it could not be more clear that they have Make Disappear.
Mhm.
I don't want to jam Thalia into Make Disappear. If they have Go for the Throat, I'm happy because they can't go for the throat after my Thalia hits the table. So what do I do? Cavern of Souls says just like laugh them out of the game, basically.
Mhm.
Like they literally are just gonna lose that game now because that Thalia is gonna come down and their whole turn to play, they can't do anything. Um, I think this is gonna make disappear much, much worse
Mhm.
than it has been. Um, basically this is the kind of help that tribal decks need.
Yeah.
Like it's just brutal to tap out for let's say a dinosaur in this set, a huge dinosaur, and it just gets countered. Come on.
Yeah. These
Um,
these kindred decks really need that help. Um,
yeah, that's right, Kindred.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
I just
I
sorry, I just wanted to point out because we just had a big talk about it, but yes, this
absolutely.
and also Jeff has mentioned this before that like when this was first spoiled a long time ago, that like you're gonna see this land in like There's a possibility it could pop up in Atraxa lists or different things that like have one
Mhm.
specific creature they really want to make sure doesn't get countered.
Right.
It could land there as well. So just even if you're not looking at different like vampire decks or merfolk decks or dinosaur or whatever, you're gonna want this card. It's a mythic. Take it when you see it. It's
It's very, very good. Like,
very good. This
yeah.
will be in Explorer, and we also have a Resplendent Angel reprint, which is a huge,
Oof.
huge card in the Angel deck in Explorer, and Cavern of Souls is going to be very helpful for that as well. That deck
Yeah.
has
I
fallen
think,
out of favor, but it's always fun, and it's a good like it's a great deck for onboarding you into Explorer.
yeah. I think Cavern of Souls is a great reprint into the
Hmm.
Explorer metagame
Yeah,
because it's going to give Kindred decks a fighting chance.
yeah,
Uh, Whereas it feels like they're some of them are fine, but it feels like they're fighting from behind a little bit at the moment. So
yeah. All the elf ball and everything. That's probably like the
yeah, and the mono white humans
ooh,
kind
but you
of
know who
thing.
likes this? Spirits. Ooh,
Spirits, there you go.
that makes
And you,
it
like you can do the whole like my mana base is sketchy thing, and
exactly.
yeah.
My mana base is kind of sketchy.
You can
Um,
cheat your mana green for the cocoa because you can have a bunch of Cavern of Souls
we
for
probably
the spirits.
it's true. You can
You
do
can do
I
that.
I mean like because most of the white cards you're playing in that deck are spirits, so it doesn't
Mhm.
matter. You're not playing really any non spirit white cards. Interesting. I do like it. I was thinking straight up just cutting cocoa altogether, but you got me excited now.
Now the cocoa can be countered. So
Yeah, that's true. For all of those who don't know, Coco is Collected Company, um,
yeah,
which is coming to Arena. It's already on Arena, but it was in Konstantarki here, so it would be arriving with that set.
actually, it is in. I'm pretty sure it's in
Dragons.
Dragons.
Fuck God. You know what? I was just trying to pretend like I actually knew and slip it right in there, but you had to call me out. It's all right. I called you out. You called me out. That's great.
Ah,
Um,
perfect.
yeah, it just like all works out.
Revenge is
So
a fish fester called.
yes. Ooh. It's just got really chilly in here. Anyway, I did want to point out before we continue that there are actually this doesn't happen very often. Most of the time in a set we have like the rare do lands or the rare lands. There's 5 of them, and that's it.
Mhm.
We got Cavern of Souls. We also have 2 more rare lands in this set. But I did want to mention that these ones are a little dicey, and they did not make it onto my no pass list.
Yeah, same.
So we're not just talking about rare lands in general. There are specific ones we think are really great. The 2 I think that are, I don't know, are the caves. So this
Yeah,
set
and
has,
Cavern of Souls is not a cave, but
it's not a
yeah,
cave.
because
It's a
it's a reprint.
because it's a cavern.
Of course, yeah,
Yeah,
cavern.
even though they're the lost caverns of Ixalan and caves, but whatever. Um, it kind of fits. Anyway, this set has a strong cave theme. So if you played during Amonkhet, there was a desert theme, like land subtype desert. We have a lot of land subtype cave. Um, there are some cards that point out to caves are going to be great. This is going to be a deck in. There's a lot of cards that reference caves and make it feel like it could be a thing. Um, I don't know. We will see. But the first one that I'm like, oh, this is a really cool card, but I don't think that you should take it necessarily. I don't really know. I'm kind of on the fence, but like mostly defensive. I'd rather just not waste picks on it. Is Echoing Deeps. So it's just a colorless land. It's a cave, taps for colorless, and it says you may have Echoing Deeps enter the battlefield tapped as a copy of any land card in a graveyard, except it's a cave in addition to its other types. Um,
Oof.
Interesting. It is a tapped land, then, if it produces color of any kind. This is the most interesting of the caves, in my opinion. And so
Mhm.
this is the one that was the closest to being like, maybe it'll make it on. but I just don't think I'm going to use this card. I,
I don't see a strong reason to be
yeah,
honest.
it like,
I don't totally get it. It's one of those cards where I'm prepared to be like, oh yeah,
oh, that's cool with this thing or
this is
whatever.
this is pretty good with the turtle, I guess, or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah,
Like,
it's like self mill strategies. You
still
get
is
whatever
it
color
technically?
you want, I guess, or
Kind
it can
of.
turn
If you happen to
into
mill it,
it turns into a creature land that died earlier. But
it's like your fifth Restless Cottage
yeah,
or something.
but like it's a cave, so it does cave stuff. And there is a cave creature land, but you need a bunch of caves for it to work. I don't know. It
I
if it
wasn't I wasn't totally vibing the whole cave thing.
I'm not
Prepared to
su-
be wrong,
yeah, I'm
but
not super vibing on them either. But I am prepared to be wrong, and I would be very happy to be wrong.
yeah.
I do think that if this card didn't enter tapped and I think the hoop of it turns into a land in your graveyard is big enough that it should enter untapped. Then
Mhm.
I'd be super on board, and I'd be like, "Fuck yes, let's take this land." That is it. Anyway, so I just want to make a big note. This section wasn't about rare lands; it was about good rare lands.
Yeah. Generally rare dual lands always, and then
Mhm.
sometimes the non-dual
The other
lands that
ones,
are rares. Or
um,
tri lands or whatever, like multicolor. Rare
exactly.
lands that tap for multiple colors. Pretty much always there.
Yeah. Um, Perfect. Well, Jeff. So we jumped ahead and talked about caves a little bit here. There might be more cave talk, but honestly, I just don't think it's that exciting
Yeah.
as like a
Yeah.
mechanic in general of the new things that are coming to the set. Like, ooh,
So I think it's like with a new set, there's so much to parse.
it's true.
One thing that I've started doing recently is kind of identify something that just off the cuff, quick judgment doesn't seem like something I'm super interested in personally,
Hmm.
and I devote way less time to looking at it. Caves
Yes.
was the obvious one for me right off the
Hmm.
bat. All this cave stuff, if somebody builds a caves deck and it's awesome, maybe it catches my attention. Maybe I'll look closer at these, but just like off the cuff, first look at this stuff. It's not my thing. It's not for me. And so I'm not going to devote too much time to analyzing the caves cards.
Yes. If you can read a cave card and they all say enters the battlefield tapped, I'm immediately like uninterested in lands that
Yeah,
do that.
and
And
it's just like
so
super expensive, crappy activated ability. I'm
yeah,
get out
and
of
they're all
here.
common and like the the one that blows up non-basic lands doesn't even give you a land back. It just gives you a treasure token. Like
Yeah,
these are bad. Um
yeah.
and
Worst
what
field of ruin ever.
exactly. So but that's just me. Like I
Yeah,
want you who's excited about caves out there to make a great cave deck and show me that I'm wrong. So please do that and send it to our Discord. If you go in the show notes
absolutely.
below, you can find us there. Go into our standard thing, post your cave deck, and be like, "This is the best fucking thing ever. You guys fucking suck." Um, I would love for you to do that so I can tell you that you're wrong. But caves, eh, not super exciting. There are some pretty sweet mechanics in this set, though. So, Jeff, do you want to? Should we talk about a couple of these?
Okay, so the first one I want to talk about is craft.
Yes.
Um, Basically, let's see if I can do this off the top of my head without looking at a craft card.
Okay, I'll look at
Like,
one, and then I'll
so
tell
a
you.
card that says craft will
Hmm.
generally, it's a permanent and it will have an activated ability.
Hmm.
And what you do is you pay some mana and then also exile a very specific collection of other permanents.
Hmm.
Sometimes that's like exile any other artifact, exile another creature, or it's like exile this, 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 and this.
Hmm.
So it's very general what you can exile. And what that does is transform the card, basically.
Yes.
The transformed version will almost always reference the cards that you exiled and get some sort of abilities. So the idea is you're like combining this with other things you have on the battlefield. Um,
Or the graveyard.
Or okay,
Yes.
sometimes the graveyard, yeah.
So, for all of the craft ones, you can always craft a card.
You can
Either
always craft from the graveyard.
yes,
Okay, that's the part I was missing.
I'm
Gotcha.
fairly yeah, yeah. All of them say so. It'll be like craft artifact 2 and a white, and you pay 2 and a white. Exile this artifact as well as an artifact you control or one in your graveyard as a sorcery. It transforms.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Um, so what's cool about this is that it is a big emphasis on like I would much rather craft cards in my graveyard because I've already used them or discarded them or milled them for whatever reason,
Hmm.
and that's super exciting. um in the realm of Magic, very exciting. In the realm of Standard right now, so much random incidental graveyard hate that makes me so
Yeah.
mad. It's going to be like fucking don't ruin my cool mechanics. But craft is like this, the mechanics in this set feel so open-ended. Like you were saying, craft is like there's a lot of craft artifact stuff, but there's like craft island. There's like craft
Yeah.
dinosaur. There's like just whatever. They can be whatever they want. Which is awesome. And I I'm excited for this. This is just the beginning of my excitement for like the mechanics of this set. Uh, and say what you will about whatever, but like I think the sets of this new like standard season, um, the mechanics are just hitting harder, hitting better. I feel like we were talking about Wilds of Eldraine, how all the mechanics really hit together and they all seem to be working
Mhm.
well. I feel like it's going to be very similar with Lost Caverns of Ixalan because a lot of the cards are like, oh, okay, you all like the same shit. This is great, which
Yeah.
I am very excited for.
Yeah. I missed the graveyard thing as I was
It's
reading this the
so
first
good.
time.
It's so
That
good.
makes me way more interested in it.
Yeah,
It still feels a bit clunky to
it's a
me.
little slow.
I think it's cool. I like what they're trying to do. Like the mechanic is cool.
Yeah,
I'm struggling to find a card where I'm like, yeah, I'm game. I get it.
yes.
I wonder
So
if this is one of those like priced for limited mechanics because everything
that
just seems so expensive.
that is what I'm in thinking about most of the time when I was talking about all the mechanics working together is limited in my mind.
Right. Yeah.
Um, but yes, I think we will maybe find one craft card that makes it into standard, if that. Just because for the most part, yes, they are a bit slow and clunky. Um, but this works really well with Descend. So there's a new mechanic called Descend/Descent/Descended. This is another weird one that does a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
So um,
This one to me is even weirder
it's really
because
weird.
it doesn't always work the same way.
Yeah, it works 4 different ways. Okay, so they all care about permanent cards in your graveyard. That is what it cares about. So Descend 4 and Descend 8 are exactly the same. It just means like a card turns on, like it has an extra effect if you have 4 permanent cards in your graveyard or 8 permanent cards in your graveyard. As well as Fathomless Descent cares about the number of permanent cards in your graveyard. But the most interesting cards that have this are really the ones that say Descended, and
Mhm.
they have different triggered abilities or different things whenever you either put a permanent card into your graveyard or it will trigger at your end step and do something for the amount of times that you descended or if you descended on your turn. And descending means a permanent card is put into your graveyard from anywhere. So that can be
Yeah.
your hand, your library, from the battlefield, blah, yada, yada, yada.
Now, big call out. You pointed out to me in the
Mm-hmm.
Discord channel. It says permanent card. Tokens aren't cards, and
Mm-hmm.
so contrary to the way these types of effects often work for Descended in particular, obviously, for
Yeah.
Descend 4 and Descend 8 tokens obviously don't count. and Fathomless Descent. But
Mhm.
for Descended, tokens don't trigger it. Um, Probably to make it work kind of similar to the other ones, I
Yeah.
guess.
As
Um,
opposed to dies, where tokens do trigger dies things
mhm.
and revolt things.
Yeah,
Um,
left the battlefield kind of
yeah,
stuff.
which is what those care about. Descended cares about permanent cards going to your graveyard.
Yeah,
Yes. Very important distinction because there are certain cards that care about they make tokens and then care about cards going to the graveyard. So
yeah,
it's
and there's like map tokens in the set, right? So, and map tokens
exactly.
won't trigger Descended.
Well, Jeff, what the fuck is that? What's a map token?
Okay, so way back in the day, it's funny because this is like an artifacted. They love to do this where they artifact token versions of mechanics.
Hmm.
So they've taken a kind of strange mechanic from original Ixalan and then weirdified it a little more by by actually putting it on a token,
Hmm.
uh, an artifact token that you create. But a map token is an artifact token that you pay one and sack it to have a creature you control explore.
Hmm.
Now, exploring is you look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you put it into your hand, and if it's not, you reveal it and put a +1/+1 counter on the creature.
And you get to decide whether you keep the card on top or you put it in your graveyard.
Right, that's the other part of explore. You do get to, so you surveil sort of.
Yeah,
Uh,
if it's a non-land, you can
right,
surveil it.
right.
Um,
It's like if it's a land, draw a card.
mhm.
If it's a non-land, surveil and put a +1/+1 counter on
Yes,
my creature.
essentially, which
And so this is a
matters.
map token, which
Yeah.
now requires a creature for you to
Hmm.
use it,
Use it.
um, which does this. Okay, so I didn't get my verdict on Descent. Love it. It's super weird and very
Gotcha. Yeah.
confusing after like craft is already confusing about how it always works differently.
Yeah.
So Descent also pretty confusing. Um, as an enfranchised player, it's fine for me. I
Yeah.
just worry about newer
New
players.
players.
But I love Descent. It's my favorite mechanic in the set. Explore, I also love it. I am coming in, sorry, map
Map
tokens.
tokens. Yeah.
Yeah. I liked Explore more than I thought I would in original Ixalan because it
Same.
read as this is a weird thing. I don't
Really.
get it, but it actually plays pretty naturally.
Yeah.
Um,
I will say that I forget about the like put it in your graveyard thing every single
yes,
time.
that's the part that's unnatural to me, but
Hmm.
the other part it feels supernatural. It's like, oh, it's a land, bang,
Yeah. Yeah.
non-land counter.
Keep it on top, which is almost always what you do. But this set
Right,
adds a
it's a
new,
non-land card. What do you want to
yeah,
draw? Like,
yeah. So like now you're in this situation where it's like maybe I want to put this non-land card in my graveyard so I trigger Descended or something. Or now
yeah,
I that will be my threshold to 8 permanent cards in my graveyard.
right. Or I want to craft with this.
Yeah, exactly. Something like that.
Yeah.
Where it's like it's better in my graveyard and I'll draw something else. Because it
So explore works well with descend and craft. The
mhm.
only like anti synergy is map tokens don't trigger descended. Um,
Yes.
but I think Wizards has like proven to me in recent sets that the artifact tokens,
Hmm.
they've all been awesome. Clue
Yeah.
tokens were great, blood
Hmm.
tokens were great, treasure tokens are like a staple now, and
Busted.
they've toned back the power
Hmm.
level of cards they print that use those because they
Yeah.
realize they're so good. And I think map tokens, like, if
Hmm.
they tested this and they played with it and they like it, I like it too
Yeah.
because they've. I've always come in being like, I don't know, is this artifact token gonna work? And like, it's always the answer is like a
Like blood.
resounding yes. Yeah,
Blood was the biggest one from 2 years ago where we were like, is it gonna be good? I don't know. Yeah, it was great.
yeah. And then I
Like,
remember we reframed it as like it gives every card in your deck cycling. We're like, oh,
oh,
that's amazing.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think BAP tokens will be great, and they only cost 1 to trigger, which is fantastic. which
But you need a
also
creature.
you do
So
need a creature. But for your purposes, you don't always need a creature because if you're just trying to sacrifice it, just having a
yeah,
map token is great. I would like to point out that we do have a creature called Spyglass Siren, which is a single blue mana for a 1/1 creature siren pirate with flying. And when it enters the battlefield, you create a map token. So just we have a 1/1 that makes a map token when it enters, very similar to Valdarin Epicure and
yeah,
Thraven Inspector. Just
right.
throwing that out there. That
So is this like we're gonna get a green one and a black one? We're gonna complete the like 10-year cycle here,
I mean,
15-year
maybe
cycle that's going on here.
we have one that enters with a clue, we have one that enters with a blood, and now one with a map. So we just need two
Yeah.
more.
You just need one that's a one drop that enters with the treasure, and
Uh,
then
we have a 2-drop that enters with the treasure, so it's also
one drop
red
that
though.
enters with the treasure. I'd be interested no matter what else it
Yeah,
does. It could be a 0/0. I'm into it. It just dies and I
just
get a
makes
treasure.
it's basically it just says like it just says sorcery that says make a treasure.
I'm
Are you
in.
interested in
No, but
that?
it puts a creature in my graveyard
Oh, right. That's true.
instead of a sorcery.
What a
Um,
weird, what a stupid design that would be.
you can
That's
tell why
seriously-
I don't work for Wizards. I'd be like, yo, this would be a great card for the
be so
decks that
sweet.
I play.
Hmm.
Channel my death triggers and everything. It'd be
Yeah,
great. Um, yeah, so this seems really cool.
yeah,
I'm psyched for map tokens. I'm ready. I think this is the first time it's like there's some hoops to jump through to actually use the token.
yes.
Usually it's like, I mean, I guess blood tokens you have to have a card in your hand, but
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah, that you need a blood
I
token,
mean,
or sorry, you need a card in your hand. You need a blood
yeah,
token to use a
you need
blood
a blood
token.
token to use a
It's
blood
true. It's true.
token.
Um, but
Come back next week for more expert analysis.
that's right. That's what we do at the Read Regulars. Um, we do have two more like mechanics, one real mechanic and one that feels just kind of like it's housekeeping.
Mhm.
Um, but we have the discover mechanic. So Jeff, have you ever heard of the mechanic Cascade before? Hmm.
Cascade.
Yeah.
Um, oh yeah, that's like the Maelstrom thing. What's that called?
Yeah, it's like
Enter
that.
the Maelstrom.
Mm-hmm. So Cascade was super busted, right? Like there were a bunch of weird combos with it that shouldn't have happened. Like, obviously, if we ever did something like Cascade again, we'd make it a little bit weaker, right?
Much weaker, I would think.
Yeah, you'd think, right? Um, you kind of get what I'm alluding to. Discover is kind of like Cascade, but like better. Like it takes so Cascade is a mechanic where it is something on a creature. So Bloodbraid Elf is like a 4 mana whatever, but when it is cast, right? When you cast it, it cascades into another card as well. And Cascade just means you reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a non-land card with mana value less than the mana value of the spell that you just cast, and then you get to cast that card for free. Now, what can happen is that if you cascade into a combat trick or a counter spell or something that's not really what you want to play, you want to play them at very specific times. That sucks. That not
Boo.
acceptable. Boo, boo, boo. The thing that
I
Cascade
think we've
actually,
all been playing Jund and Bloodbraid Elfed into Thoughtseize,
yeah,
right? We're at 2 life.
every time. Um, so sure, that's a thing that happens, but when people are playing Cascade decks, that's not ever the situation. They're like when the whole thing was going on with like um Tybalt, when you could cascade into his planeswalker side. If you don't remember that, during Kaldheim, Tybalt is a like a 2 mana creature that would transform into a 7 mana planeswalker, or you could also play it as a 7 mana planeswalker. You could
Mhm.
cascade into the 2-drop and then actually just cast the 7-drop, and it was busted and stupid. So bad that they had to change the cascade rule that you were no longer allowed to do that. Um, this is a long tangent to just say Discover is a new mechanic that basically does the same thing but better. Where um, a card can have Discover on it or an activated ability that says Discover or something.
Mhm.
The good thing with this actually, and the
Maybe even a
designs,
planeswalker.
yeah, the design space is actually better with this because it will always say Discover a number. So, like Discover 4 is very common.
Right. It's not always tied to its mana value.
Exactly. So you don't have to worry about that. So um, you could have like a really cheap or really expensive card that discovers for very little, things like that.
Right.
Um, which before it was just so finicky. Um, I think this is good change. So Discover will do the same thing. So let's say we discover 4. You flip over cards from the top of your library to get a non-land card with 4 mana value or less. You can cast it, or if you don't want to cast it, you can put it into your hand. So when you cascade into that Thoughtseize or that counterspell or combat trick, instead you can put it into your hand if it's not the best time to actually cast it. All upside.
Yeah.
This is just going to replace Cascade. It feels like.
It's stronger, I
Mm-hmm.
think, like technically, like you're saying, but it's also better designed,
Yes,
I
it is
think.
better designed.
Um, and then I think the other thing to call out is they've been pretty careful with it.
Mm-hmm.
So they're because
Nothing.
the way Cascade works in the dumb way that sort of
Mm-hmm.
Zach is describing is um, you just don't play anything with a mana value less than the
The,
Cascade card,
yeah.
except the one thing you always want to hit.
Mm-hmm.
So what ends up happening is like your deck is instead of being the random fun like Cascade.
Chaos. Oh
I
my
think
god!
Jund is the only deck that just legitimate. I just play Bloodbraid Elf because it's good and I'll hit what I hit.
I get Liliana. I
Every
get whatever.
other deck that plays Cascade is like, I'm gonna hit this stupid zero cost spell that I'm supposed to have to jump through hoops to play. I'm gonna play
Mm-hmm.
it for free every single time. And I just won't play anything with CMC 3 or less
Yeah.
to facilitate that. And I'll cheat with like Bone Crusher Giants and crap like that to
Yeah.
get around
Which
that.
so this is like Dex and Modern do this. I think was it like Teamer Rhinos does this, where there's
Yeah.
like cards with suspend. So you're supposed to technically their mana value is 0 because there's no mana value, and you have to suspend them, and you have to wait 3 turns or whatever to play the thing. Instead, you just get to play it for free because you always cascade into it because it's the only target. Um, which
But
is
that's what making it like a mechanic that requires a number.
mhm,
That's what lets them do. They can make cheap cards that just have descend or sorry, discover 5.
yeah.
So it's like they've basically designed it so there is no card that you can just put in and it's reasonable for you to build a deck that doesn't include anything of lesser mana cost than that.
Yeah.
Like the card itself will trigger
Itself. Yeah. Cascade
its
or
own
Discover.
discover. So you basically just can't do that.
Hmm. So there's a card I was talking about earlier, which is Hit the Motherload, which is 4 red, red, red. So 7 mana for a sorcery.
Ridiculous card.
It says it's also a rare, I believe. Yeah, it's a rare. It's a
Yeah, this is
sorcery.
one of those rares that you don't need on your no pass list. And
Yeah. Let Saffron Olive or some streamer play this deck, and then have fun watching them play it, and then don't play it yourself. Uh,
don't ever craft it.
yes. We've seen a lot of red cards like this, so you should be able to identify that this red card is just like the other ones, and you just don't need to. But anyway, it's a 7 mana sorcery that says discover 10. 10. Wow. My god. So of course you're gonna get like a Llanowar Elf. Um,
Yeah, exactly.
It says if the discovered card's mana value is less than 10, create a number of tapped treasure tokens equal to the difference. So that in that scenario, we get 9 tapped treasure tokens. For 7 mana. That's so exciting. Um,
The fact that they're tapped really, I mean, I understand, but it irks me.
yeah, I mean that's like the
This card
new
is terrible.
treasure token should have basically always come into play tapped, but they didn't learn that until uh New Capena. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's our discover topic. Um, these cards. So this mechanic works well with explore, which I think is interesting because then you'll know the top of your deck. Um, ish, ish.
Yeah.
Um, but it doesn't really trigger with the graveyard. So this is the only one that feels almost a little weak with the other ones. I think all the craft and descended and all that stuff, explore seem a little bit more exciting for the graveyard stuff, and I'm really excited for graveyard stuff for this set.
Yes.
It's
And the
gonna be sick.
finality tokens, did we actually
Oh,
mention that? It's like the
we did.
half mechanic, but it's
You
like
should tell us what finality tokens are because that was the next thing we're getting to.
yeah, so or sorry, finality counters?
Counters, yes. Fuck.
Yeah.
Well,
Um
whatever. We're drinking.
exactly. So a finality counter is like we've often seen a rider on a bunch of
Hmm.
cards like bring this back or put this into play, and it gains the text if this would die or leave the battlefield, exile it instead.
Hmm.
Um, they're just sort of formalizing that with a counter.
Yeah. So there is a counter that says exactly that. If a card has a finality counter on it, it now gains the text. If this would leave the battlefield, exile it instead.
Right.
Boom.
So we've seen this a bunch of times. They're just sort of
Cleaning it up.
paving the way to make this require less space in the future.
Hmm.
But also it does like uh if I'm interpreting it correctly, it does open the door for like removing counters kind of
It's true.
shenanigans.
Yes, there are. So we don't know if they're going to just explicitly use this instead because this just gives them another knob to turn, right?
Right.
Because you will be able to remove counters from things, do that kind of stuff. It's a little bit harder to remove counters than it is to just make more of the same counter. That tends to
Yeah,
be
it's
something
not
you can
easy to remove counters,
no
but it is
possible.
present. It's
Yes,
possible.
it is a type of thing. So that is cool. Uh,
Or like you have their solemnity kind of stuff, like counters can't be put on
that's true.
things. Like weird combo. Like the
Yeah.
weirdest solemnity combo. If you're gonna be playing
If
solemnity
if
combo,
you're
like
not playing
there are
9 lives with
better
solemnity, like
things
what are
to
you
do.
doing anymore?
Like,
like like if you're gonna go through the hoops too. So solemnity is
it's
a
an
like
option.
is like a 3 mana enchantment from Amonkhet that just says counters can't be put on permanents or players. And there's a combo with it with 9 lives, which was enchantment that made you lose the game if you got attacked 9 times, basically. But you couldn't put
But
counters
it
on.
tracked that with counters, so you would just
Hmm.
never get any counters, let alone 9.
So then you just prevent all the damage all the time. Um, unless your opponent has a Bone Crusher Giant, and then you lose the game because
Yeah,
that card deals 2 damage, and damage can't be prevented that turn.
doesn't let you prevent the damage.
So then you just lose. But anyway, um, if you didn't know what that deck was, it was something that happened in Historic back when Historic was the only format on Arena that wasn't standard or limited. So old times, man. Back when we started the podcast, crazy.
Yeah. I remember
Ooh.
talking about this deck and being like, man, it really sucks for them that Bone Crusher Giant is in every red deck.
Yeah. Also, the fact that it like people didn't even like you could lose the game because you didn't realize that that situation worked.
Right.
And so that was a weird thing that happened for a long time. Um, anyway, wow, I'm having a great time. We're having
Yeah.
we're not even talking about cards. We're just talking about mechanics. I'm like, super excited for this set to come out.
It's a cool set.
It is a cool
Should we
set.
talk about some cards?
We should talk about some cards.
Yeah.
I think I want to pass it off to you. I want to hear some of the things you're excited about, or just themes or different stuff you're seeing that you're going to be diving into for sure.
Yeah. So I think the thing for me to start off with for
Hmm.
sure is the sacrifice theme that is
Mm.
present in this set. I love sacrifice decks. That's like my bread and butter these days. But I think they actually took this in an interesting direction, and it's way more supported than I actually thought it would be. So
Yes.
early on in spoiler season, and you posted this in the Discord channel,
Hmm.
but we got Bartolome del Presidio, uh, which is basically just it's a 2-drop. It's white
Hmm.
and a black. It's a 2/2, and it can sacrifice creatures or artifacts to put a +1/+1 counter on it. Full stop. That's it.
That's it.
It's activated ability, sacrifice creature or artifact. No tapping. No mana has to be spent. There's no activate only as a sorcery.
Mm-mm.
This is insane. We don't get this anymore. This feels like a design they would have made 10 years ago, not realizing how stupid good it is. They made this on purpose. They know how good this is. Uh,
They did slap it on a legendary creature, so at least there's that. But
if you've played these decks before, you know you only need
you,
one.
you need one.
But yeah. So I'll talk a little bit about it, but the strength here is not the +1/+1 counters. It's not to go big on this thing. It's just the ability to sack anything at any time for any purpose
Hmm.
is very, very strong. If you look at modern cards, they always require some sort of timing restriction, or you can only do it once a turn, or like that kind of
Yeah,
thing
like
to just sacrifice stuff.
your favorite card that you play, Anvil, plays
Yeah.
against, like, it does
Anvil, you can
exactly
only
that.
use one per turn cycle, basically, because
Hmm.
it taps. Um, this just like sacrificing stuff is in itself a very powerful effect.
Hmm.
Even if it didn't do anything, even if it just said sacrifice a creature or artifact at instant speed whenever you want, like that's pretty good.
Hmm.
The fact that it also grows and whatnot because of that. No, this card is very, very strong, but it leads to what I think is interesting about this set is the sacrifice theme is black and white,
Hmm.
and a lot of the good cards are white. So recently, sack themes have been black red. So
Hmm.
it's like, do we go Mardu?
For
Yeah, it's
years.
been like the rest of standard.
Hmm.
Black red is the sacrifice colors. Do we go Mardu? Do we say these white cards are good, but they're not good enough to penetrate 3 years of standard? Or do we say, hey, let's jump ship and go black white?
Hmm.
Um, this set is making the case for that. There's a lot of stuff in here. There's Veto, which is like the big legendary creature. It does like the Omnath sacrifice thing where
Hmm.
sacrifice 3 times in a turn, you just get like a cascade of effects. Um, but I think more importantly, there's uh, just the small like utility stuff. So there's Mephitic Draft, which is reminds me of oh, fuck that like turtle statue that was in all the modern combo decks, but it
Turtle
basically
statue.
is it a turtle? Anyways, there's
Oh,
like
I don't
this
know. Anyway, sorry.
in the like modern combo decks, there's this it literally all it does is a 2-mana artifact. When it ETBs draw a card, when it leaves the battlefield, draw a card. This is
Oh,
like the
Ichor Wellspring.
Ichor Wellspring, yes.
Hmm.
Um this is that, but you lose a life on either end. There's Fanatical Offering, which is it's their version of Deadly Dispute. It
Mm.
makes a map token instead of a treasure, so it's much worse. But
Yeah.
in these types of decks, probably still very good. Like all you care about is the the cardboard, like the fact that it's generating another
Hmm.
artifact. Then it has a couple of 1-drops that have death triggers. Market Gnome draws you the
Mm.
card when it dies, and Greedy Freebooter makes the treasure token when it dies. I like that the two they gave you are in different colors. One's white and one's black. So
Hmm.
you usually want your one drops to be the same color. So now when you're building a sack deck, it's like, do I play Market Gnome as my one drop? Do I play Greedy Freebooter as my one drop? Or do I play Voldaren Epicure as my one drop? And
Mm,
they're all different colors. I still kind of feel like Voldaren Epicure is the best one because it gets its money on the way in.
yeah.
But I don't
Especially,
know. These are convincing. A treasure token? A treasure token? Greedy Freebooter? That's good.
I mean, like, th yes, I think that Epicure is probably still better, and like you are the sacrifice player, so it's
I
difficult for
play
me
a
to
lot of
actually
this.
say anything
And
about it.
but I might have those rose tinted glasses for Epicure because it's
That's
just
what I
like I
was
just
gonna
love
say.
Epicure.
Like
It's
you
so
have a
good.
different feeling for Epicure than I do. I know Epicure is strong, but like it hasn't won me as many games as it's won you. So
No,
like
it's won me so many
exactly.
games.
Where like I'd
But
almost
these are different. They're not
yes,
necessarily worse,
worse
but like
or whatever.
the way I play the deck, it's
Hmm.
pretty aggressively slanted because of Epicure. So it's
Yes.
like you could retinker it for these guys. You'd be a little less guns blazing,
Hmm.
but the ability is slightly more powerful once you sack
Yeah.
them. So
It's also that like Market Gnome is an artifact, right? So
right,
um that synergizes in a different way. Um
for sure.
yeah.
And I think they're doing this on purpose, right? They're like, okay,
Hmm.
Sandom's going to be around for 3 years. There's going to be a sack deck. Your options are so varied now. Your
Hmm.
colors are varied. What cards you want to play? Do you want to do the artifact thing? Not. Um, so I think this is a really cool way to continue the sacrifice theme that a lot of players like. I know a
Yeah.
lot of players are sick of it. I get that. I really like it because sacrificing permanents at the right time is a very skill intensive thing, and it's a really fun way to like win the game for me
It is.
personally.
Also, for everyone out there who is new to sacrifice decks on Arena, they are a lot more fun to me personally to play in Arena because most of the math feels like it just happens there. When you're playing in
Right. Yeah.
paper, you really like you could screw up, you can miss stuff, weird things happen. If you're playing on Arena,
It's
it
true.
won't forget when things ping things.
It's
Um,
true. They get a worse rap than they deserve because of paper
mhm.
and because of Cauldron Familiar combo, which is like
That
this
it
isn't
is.
that.
It's been long enough since Cauldron Familiar that I feel better now.
You're over it.
Well, because I don't play against it all the time anymore, so I don't exactly know
Ooh.
who the people who are really complaining about it are. But
But I feel like
I,
that's just left this sour taste of sacrifice decks in everyone's mouth. Like
I mean, that was
they're
pretty.
fine to play against now, I think.
The Cauldron combo was annoying as not call. It wasn't really a combo, but the Cauldron
It's
Familiar
a
and the
combo.
it was a
The witches oven.
synergy. Um, anyway, it was annoying, but not to the point where I don't think sacrifice decks are great anymore at all. Um,
Yeah.
but yes, I could totally see that. I did want to point out we are getting a set sorry. So I wanted to close a little bit on sacrifice decks that like this is
Yeah.
really interesting, and I love that this is what Wizards should be doing. And they do this often enough, but I haven't really loved it. And I think it's in the vein of commander players with their color identity, where they get upset sometimes when certain. This happened with Kamigawa. So when Neon Dynasty came out, there were a bunch of cool vehicles that came out, but they were like blue, which was frustrating to people I knew who had a bunch of Mardu vehicle decks because vehicle decks in the past were all Mardu. And so all these
Right.
blue vehicles made it so they couldn't play them in their commander decks. Fast forward to now, you're talking about sacrifice decks. Now we have a really interesting thing where you have to choose. Like you don't have to just, oh, I'm playing these two colors because this is what sacrifice decks are. They're always black and red.
Yeah.
This is what you do. You pick the best cards from these things or whatever. Now you have to make a decision. I think that's really interesting. And obviously, in standard, we have the choice of trying to be greedy and put all three into the deck. Um, we don't have a try Mardu land, so is it even worth trying to do, right? Like,
Exactly.
is that a good idea? What should you do? All that's really interesting. Can you lean heavy enough on treasures that you'll be fine? Stuff like that.
Yeah, I
So,
just want to quickly say to that point, they've released a card, Dusk Rose Reliquary, which
mhm,
is basically like an Oblivion Ring style effect, or
mhm.
similar to Glass Casket. You have to
Yes.
sack a creature to play it,
Or artifact.
or artifact. But now, if you look at the one drop removal, they have this one in white.
Hmm.
Then they have Annihilating Glare to
Yes.
sack a creature for
Creature.
1 black to destroy anything, and then they have the red spell that does 4 if you sack
Is it all
an
creature or
artifact.
artifact? Is
So
it
this one,
annihilating
so
glare?
Torch the Tower, I think is creature or artifact, but the one I
Okay,
play is just artifact.
just
Um,
artifact.
but yeah, like so now they have basically one of each,
Hmm.
white, black, and red, one drop removal spells that let you sack a creature or artifact
Yeah.
to buff them up. And again,
Hmm.
it's just like, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna do the full Mardu and stretch your mana base on a what is essentially an aggro deck, which is sketchy? Or are you gonna
Hmm.
play black white? You're gonna play black red. I don't think you're playing red white if you're playing a
No.
sack deck. But basically you have those other 3 options. And I think it's the fact that they've done this a few different times. Okay, we have 3 1 drops you want to play. We have 3 one
Hmm.
drop removal spells you want to play, and they're each in a different
I
color. Is very thought out. Like they've done this on purpose.
This is super cool. I love you pointing this out too because it's not something I would like glance over it, but diving deep
Mhm.
into more of the intricacies of what it like actually um how you would actually put your deck together. So I will read Dusk Rose Reliquary because it is different than the other ones where it's just a single white for an artifact as a digital cost. You have to sacrifice an artifact or a creature. It does have Ward 2, and then when it
Right.
enters the battlefield, you can exile an artifact or a creature an opponent controls until it leaves the battlefield. Which,
I love the idea of sacking this when I no longer care about the thing
mhm,
that's under it too.
to a
Um,
different Dusk Rose Reliquary to get the thing you
yeah,
actually care
that's
about.
right. The thing or
Yeah.
like, I'm living the Mardu dream here. That's getting sacked. Just an anvil. It's like I care
Mm,
so little about your creature. I'll
I
trade it
just
for a 1/1
I need
on
another.
mine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that does also sound good. So this, or as soon as they're like they spend all the mana to target it, then you sacrifice it, right?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah.
Right.
And so he's like, great, you spent like minimum 4 mana to kill this thing.
Right.
Um, sorry.
And then I play Fanatical Offering and
Yeah. RIP your turn.
draw 2 cards, get a
Um,
map token.
oh, beautiful. So
I'm
this seems,
tempted. I'm tempted by the black white version they're presenting here.
yeah. So these are things that seem really interesting. When you, our listener, is excited for that deck, Jeff is gonna have a deck list. He already has a deck list actually in our Discord right now about like a sweet his sack deck at the moment that just did really well. So go check that out. But when you want to see more versions or newer versions, Jeff posts those quite often in our Discord. So go check them out. Um, yes. But I did want to quickly bring up this set is very like creature type focused. Uh, are we interested in any creature type besides vampires? Really, realistically.
Uh, I'm not particularly.
Yeah. The reason I'm bringing this up is because we have our 4 basic creature types that come with Ixalan, which is dinosaurs, vampires, pirates, and merfolk. However, vampires, we still have like residual vampires from Innistrad, those 2 sets, because we're in our
Mhm.
3 year standard. So that just makes vampires so much more strong and enticing that, like, if anyone's playing any sort of kindred deck in standard, I feel like the other ones aren't going to make it. Like, there's some cool dinosaur cards and stuff, but until we get more dinosaurs, maybe in another set down the line, those cards will do well. But for now,
Yeah, it's
it's
just too difficult, right?
there's
Like
not enough
in
stuff.
a even extended standard, it's just too tough.
Yeah, I mean, it
Um,
might mean like, oh, we have some dinosaur outlaws and a Thunder Junction or dinosaur stuff in
right,
the future, but those feel like seeds. They don't feel like payoffs. Where like some of the
right,
vampire stuff feels like maybe there is like a vampire, more vampire-y, sacrificey thing. You'll be able to find something, but yeah, I don't know.
for sure.
Just thought it was interesting pointing out because yeah, I saw a lot of people talking about Merfolk, and I was like, really? You think
It's like
Merfolk
I
are
think
gonna?
you're too focused on just this set, and there's a lot of
Yeah,
cool Merfolk cards. And
you're
you're not
looking at like
realizing like
you're
it's
looking at
one set versus 12. You know,
like one or two Merfolk cards that you think are going to be the best Merfolk things ever. And it's like,
and the way it
maybe.
always works is you have to fill with some garbage,
Yeah.
and
And then
the
they really
garbage
just,
is what gets you.
yeah. And so I was like, great, my hand is filled with a bunch of garbage, and I don't have the one card I needed to have on the battlefield 2 turns ago to like capitalize.
Hmm.
So just be aware of those kindred decks that are going to sneak up on you, and they'll get you excited and get you brewing, and then you're going to look at your mana base and be like, "Fuck, I don't have the right lands." So you should have just crafted, or you either crafted or picked those lands in the draft. Um,
Exactly.
man, I want to talk about some fun, stupid cards before we like settle out. I know we have two more things on the docket. But jumping back very quickly, at the beginning of the episode, I mentioned a card that I think is not worth taking in a draft or really playing at all, but it's worth mentioning because it's it's not even because next week we're doing our first Sips episode, our world famous first Sips episode. So if you've been listening to cards we've been talking about this week and you're like, wow, I wonder which cards are going to be they're like worth the slots next episode, they're going to have to wait and see because anyway, this is definitely not my half court shot. Is what I'm saying. Now, I think this card is a fever dream in the middle of the night. Is what this is. Um, it is the Millennium Calendar. It costs a single colorless for a legendary artifact at rare mythic. I can't
I think
really
it's
tell.
mythic. Set is
It's
tough to tell with,
yeah.
but this way the
Gotta
symbol works
be mythic.
looks mythic to me.
Yeah, it's got to be mythic because this card just doesn't need to be rare. Yeah, mythic
Yeah.
rare. All right. So it says whenever you untap one or more permanents during your untap step, put that many time counters on the Millennium Calendar. Then
I'm
it has an
listening.
activated ability that says pay to and tap it. You can double the number of time counters on the Millennium Calendar.
Okay, I can get a lot of time counters on this.
Yes, and then the big payoff. What are time counters? What do they do? What do they even mean? When there are 1,000 or more time counters on the Millennium Calendar, sacrifice it, and each opponent loses 1,000 life.
So you put this in the show notes, and I decided not to read it just to see. So this is my first experience with it, and I was like, "Don't look at what the number is. A, a
A
thousand."
thousand? 1,000.
Yeah, this card is terrible.
This
Um,
this is
yeah,
like this is the quintessential commander card. Like what people when the commander format was created, it was for cards like this. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like this is the kind of bullshit that used to be printed that's like it's a just obscene, but like could be fun maybe once.
yeah.
That is where this belongs. Don't pick this card. Don't try to play this in draft. I just or not draft. Like don't try to play
Just
this in
don't play
draft.
it.
Don't
Don't
play
play.
this ever.
It's
Don't
certainly not in draft.
don't play it in arena. Don't waste your time.
I mean, exponentials grow quickly, but even doubling every turn takes way too long to get to 1,000.
This is another one of those like let like Saffron Olive or like Amy the Amazonian do this in like Historic Brawl or something. Like or maybe that you get one copy, you do it there. Like this is not a standard deck. Don't.
Oh, I
Don't
forgot
craft
about
4.
proliferating though.
Yeah, like you're gonna how many times can you proliferate with your Vraska? Like, is that what you're gonna you're gonna play Vraska
6 drop
6 drop
proliferate.
proliferate? Now I
Oof.
have 10
That really
counters.
that really solved the equation. I was only able to get to 999
Yeah,
consistently, and
that extra boost got me
I
there.
love it. I don't think I've ever seen anything say 1,000 counters, so
Hmm.
that's great. And,
This,
well, a real card. I'm sure there's
yes.
like silver bordered shit
Oh,
that
I'm sure, sure.
says
So
1,000.
the big reason why this card is definitely not worth even trying or doing at all is because it does literally nothing else. It makes counters of a very weird type and
Right.
doesn't do anything. Um, like if you were playing during Kaladesh, there was a card that feels similar to it, which is Aetherflux Reservoir. Which, if you've played Commander and things like that, combo decks, this card's good because it has an activated ability where you take up a bunch of counters. I think it's like 50 or something, and then you shoot somebody in the face for 50 damage.
Yeah.
But it gets counters when you play cards, and then you gain life, and then you gain more life per card. Oh, it gave me a nice thumbs up in there.
Yeah. Love it.
But it actually does something. So when you play it and you play more cards, you do
You're
something
gaining the
while you're
life.
gaining all
Yeah.
this life. Oh, right, you pay life to shoot somebody in the face. Right, that's what it is.
Right.
Um, so this just doesn't do that. So like it reads similarly, but it's not because it has no passive ability of any kind. Um,
I mean,
sorry, besides putting counters on it.
yeah, but you're forgetting the uh what is it? One for all. It's the
Okay,
combo.
all will be one.
All
Yeah,
will be one
sure.
combo.
Sure. So if you had this card and all will be one, which is a 5 mana red enchantment, every time every time a counter is put on something, you get to deal one
You deal
damage.
that much damage to any target.
Oh, just that much damage. Okay.
Yeah. So if
Yeah.
you put 6 counters, you deal 6 damage.
Okay. So then that
Worst combo deck ever.
like on my upkeep you
It's
die or my
2 cards that
untap.
don't do anything. Combined.
Right, yeah, yeah. If you yeah, they're really two cards that do nothing. So you play all would be on 5, hope you untap, ding them for 5, and then tap it and ding them for 5 more. Okay.
Yeah, but then when you untap,
Then they're dead.
oh,
Yeah, on turn 7, you don't have anything else. I don't
do you know what's
know.
going to feel better than anything? When they're on, the classic situation where they're on
Mhm.
500 counters, um, and they activate this, and then you abrade it.
Can wait, does that work?
Because it will never get the 1,000 counters.
Oh, sure. So it's about to get 1,000 counters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'll be a situation that comes up all the time, I'm sure.
Totally. Yeah, yeah. That's going to happen at the next Pro Tour. Um, all over the place. Millennium calendars everywhere. You hear to hear first. Millennium calendars go to the Pro Tour, and it's going to get abraded all over the place.
Yeah.
Oh, this card. Anyway, I think it's hilarious and awesome, and I love it, and the joke is there, and it's good in all those ways. I just want everyone to know that it's not worth taking. Um,
So I think the last sub-theme
mhm.
I want to discuss that's really caught my eye is the self-mill payoff. I'm going to call it the self-mill payoff. You could call it like descend or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, but we got all these front-loaded, really powerful ways to mill yourself
Mhm.
in standard. We have Jace, we have like a couple of different 2 drops that do it, and we have Tyvar, like just this whole Sultai self mill deck that I've tried to build a few times. The problem was there was never a reason to be milling yourself. Like we had like the Urborg Lurgoyf that gets bigger,
Yeah.
and they gave us Cruel Somnophage, more of the same
Hmm.
in that regard. There was never like a, yeah, that's why I'm doing this, instead of just playing a bunch of individually powerful cards.
Hmm.
And so, with the whole descend mechanic being, if you have enough permanents in your graveyard, I'm much better. I think we may at least have gotten a reason to build this deck now.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm kind of excited about this. So there's the Ancient One,
Hmm.
which feels a bit Death's Shadowy, but it's an 8/8 for 2, and it can only attack if you have Descend, or block if you have Descend 8.
Hmm.
Um, so if your whole deck is permanents, that just means mill 8 cards. That reminds me of Rogues a little bit too, but like
I
on
know.
on the other end, it's not that hard to mill 8 cards, especially when it's self mill.
Hmm.
Um, and so this is just a 2 mana 8/8, which is a lot more intriguing to me than the if you mill all creatures, then I'm
Hmm.
good. This is just like, hey, just mill 8 cards and I'm good to go.
Yeah,
Um, I also love that you can get this back with Tyvar. That's really nice. You can
that
mill
is
stuff with
true
Tyvar and bring it back later on.
because it's a two drop. That's good. See, this card, I was going in a different direction. I didn't want to get too far off the mill theme, but this card made me feel like you should just be playing Grixis Obnixilis, and this is your
Mm.
two drop that you sacrifice for your Obnixilis, the
I
adversary.
mean, I also love that.
And then you have a copy that has 8 loyalty, so you can
And then
ultimate
you just
immediately
immediately, yeah,
and keep it around.
right.
Um, is an idea, but
I mean, I love it.
yeah.
But
um, so that is like when we're talking about crazy decks that you could play, that's the kind of thing I'm a little bit more interested in, as opposed to
yeah,
the Millennium Calendar and like the cave and stuff. Um,
yeah. The
but
old require specific 2 drop and require specific 3 drop.
of course, that are different colors, and you need 3 colors by turn 3. You know,
Yeah.
actually, you need specific 2 colors by turn 2, and then two different colors by turn 3. Um, but I do think that a lot of these like mill cards do seem great. Um, like,
Plus, like the Ob Nixilis Ultimate, it's like if you get it off early in the game, you probably can't use it because it's a draw 7.
mhm.
So it's like it's better when your hand is empty and not,
No,
on turn 3 when your hand is full.
no, you want to draw 7 so you can discard all your permanents so that your creature attacks. Oh no, it's gone now. Never mind.
We sacked it.
I sacked it.
But we
The
can
fact
maybe
that,
bring it back with Tyvar,
yeah, that you just add another color, it's fine.
right? Just all the colors. Um, we also have Whale of the Forgotten, which is like it's nothing crazy, but I think if you get all 3 abilities,
Hmm.
uh, again, Descend 8, it's maybe this is just like making me think too much of Rogues when there's not actually a Rogues comparison, but it's like
Hmm.
8 is the mill, and then this is like, of course, you know, the terminate counterspell combo card that this is the Drown in the Lock, even though it's way worse.
Yeah,
Uh,
so Whale of the Forgotten is it just costs blue black for a sorcery, and it has Descend 8, and you can choose one of the next 3 things, unless you have Descend 8, and then you can choose more instead.
all 3.
Yeah, which is return target online permanent to its owner's hand, or target opponent discards a card, and or look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand, and the rest in your graveyard. Um, this card feels like it's gonna be so good until I keep looking at the stuff, and it doesn't feel like it's like I want it to kill something, you know? It does my it gives
If
me
your opponent's hand is empty,
I know, I know,
that's
I know. It gives me that classic like bounce discard removal spell.
yeah,
Um
pretty easy
but
to play around with the
mhm.
opponent. But
and but so
I like the third ability. I think you play this for the third ability.
Okay.
and then the rest is gravy. Like you're playing this because you're a mill deck. This is some card selection that also mills 2 cards for you.
Yeah.
And then it sometimes will bounce something when it needs to.
And make your opponent
Um,
discard a card.
I think it's going to be pretty rare you just cast this without Descend 8 and make
Hmm.
an opponent discard a card. But hey, if they have 1 card left in hand,
Maybe.
yeah.
It's just so hard because
Um,
right now I like love Siphon Insight, or I have loved Siphon Insight so much that like a blue black card that doesn't do the thing Siphon Insight does is like, meh.
I
I
feel
know
like they could have pushed this a little
they
harder. Like
could have pushed it.
this feels like they really toned it down. Like even when you get all 3, is it that good?
They pulled
Um,
back the numbers quite a bit.
yeah,
Yeah, like I think
it's there. It's there.
it's definitely a card.
Yeah. The card I'm interested in most, the Myco Tyrant. So this is 1 black green
Mm,
for a star trample. Its power and toughness are equal to the number of creatures you control that are fungi and or saplings. It itself is a fungus, so it's at least a 1/1.
mm-hmm,
And then at the beginning of your end step, love it, end step, create X 1/1 black fungus creature tokens that can't block, where X is the number of times you descend it. So that, again, I don't even think we mentioned that on top of there's Descend 4, Descend 8, Fathomless. This is like a number of descended rather than
mm-hmm.
like there's a difference between number of descended and just hitting a descended or
Yeah.
not. Um, so there's kind of like 5 different descends.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you create a bunch of tokens equal to the number of times you descended, um, which is pretty awesome in a mill deck. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you already have a Tyvar in play, you get to mill 3 for free kind of thing. Or basically, I don't think you generally jam this on 3 unless you're confident they won't remove it.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea is you jam it when you already have a way to immediately mill, and then you just make a bunch of 1/1s.
Mm-hmm.
This card seems pretty strong.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that they're changing the 1/1 fungus tokens so that they can't block. So
Mhm.
they're giving us more of that feel, which is really nice. I think making a ton of tokens that can't block makes the game just go better. Um, but also
Yeah,
this
because
is
these decks used to just like stray on forever
mhm.
when you just I have like 98 1/1s.
And so yeah, and so then the your opponent, or if you're doing that, your opponent is just waiting to get like a flying creature or something. And it's just like,
Mhm.
or something that's unblockable, or it's just,
Yeah.
or the game revolves around a board wipe, and just it's not as interesting. I think this card specifically is why the tokens going to the graveyard don't trigger descended, because this would just, every time a token would die, you'd get another one. Um, so this is the card that teaches
What's
us
wrong
that
with that?
it sucks. But yeah, so this is the card that teaches us that that's how descendant works. It has to be actual permanent cards. Um, yeah, I think this card's pretty sick though. Like, and it's also in like the best colors right now. So
I think the fact that it has trample, that's what
it's
sells
true.
me because it's like finally they always give cards like this nothing. There's no
Hmm.
menace, there's no trample, there's no
Yeah.
flying. It's like, well, I have a 70/70. And you're like,
Hmm.
block? Like, ah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, I
All right.
forgot you could do that. Thought
Hmm.
you would just concede to my supreme power.
Yeah.
No?
At least you can't block with your fungus token. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, no, trample's huge on this. So like
Hmm.
if you're setting this up properly, on turn 3, whatever, it's a 1/1. But later in the game, it's just like this is a 7/7 that makes a bunch of 1/1s
Yeah.
right away, essentially. Um, this is very powerful.
Hmm.
If there's a home for it, I don't know. I'm gonna try, but it's definitely a powerful card.
Yeah. I
Like it's
like it.
finally something that's like, this is why I mill myself. I don't
Hmm.
want to mill myself for fucking Slowgurk, okay? I want
No.
to mill myself for like a real payoff.
Hmm.
Finally, we have some real payoffs, so that's nice. Um, and then the last card I wanted to call out, Chupacabra Echo. Just like it, I play Ravenous Chupacabra in my Explorer deck already.
Hmm.
This is a call out to that. Apparently, when it died, it got an extra point of power, which is
Yeah.
nice. Um, but otherwise, it does a very similar thing. It is a little more reliant on your mill, though, so it's probably worse than Ravenous Chupacabra in Explorer, but
Hmm.
it still does the thing. But that's what I wanted to mention. I've been playing Delirium in Explorer, and Descent
Yes.
is like
Right
right
into that.
there, basically the same thing,
Hmm.
just a little easier to trigger. So
Yes.
uh, it could help you round out your decks. Like these cards are easier to trigger, but less powerful as a result. So you can sort of, instead of being all 1 and 2 drops and then 13 drops, you can round out the curve. Maybe that's what I'm kind of hoping Descent will do for me. Just
Hmm.
powerful cards all the way down. So it's a little closer to just a strong mid-range deck that has this additional synergy
Mm,
rather
I
than
like
feeling
that.
like I'm all in on it.
Yeah, totally. Totally, totally. Yeah, and for those who don't know, the Chupacabra Echo is just two black for a 3/2 beast horror spirit with fathomless descent, and it ETBs and gives a creature an opponent controls -X, where X is the permanent cards in graveyard. Um, nice. I think that like looking at these again, um, I think that Mills is going to be pretty strong. This seems like a strategy that, like you said, has been waiting for its day, and this set feels like it's like we're ready. They're going
Yeah.
deep on the exploring the caverns of the graveyard kind of thing. So, um,
And like they have to give you real payoffs for this because they've given everyone else so much hate for it, like so
mhm,
much
it's
incidental
true.
hate. It's just never worth it when your whole strategy is mill yourself and then it's like so fragile the payoffs
Mhm.
you get and it's just like, well, everyone just incidentally hates me out.
Yeah, that's actually a
So
great. That's a great point because with the Myco Tyrant, the Myco Tyrant doesn't care about cards in your graveyard. It only cares that cards went to your graveyard, so that you get the
right,
value up front, and so that you're not waiting to reanimate something in your graveyard or do something like that, which is normal graveyard strategies. It's just
right,
like there's a card that went in there. You can exile it later. It doesn't matter because I got the value already. It's the
exactly. Like
creatures
you
of
can have
horde.
Myco Tyrant out and then they exile
Mhm.
your graveyard and you don't, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of your deck that will matter, for example, the Ancient one, that's an
Hmm.
effective strategy against the Ancient one, but it's not effective against the Myco Tyrant. So
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's great, and that is the type of graveyard strategy that will work. I think in this standard
exactly. You
environment.
need cards like that because if you're
Hmm.
too all in on the graveyard, it's just like, one Soul Guide Lantern away from
Hmm.
your deck doing nothing. So,
It's just farewell away of just
yeah, I
farewell
mean, Farewell
hoarding.
beats a lot of decks already, but
Yeah, but it's if
most
you're
of the
like
things I play can't really beat a Farewell. But,
yeah, but it is the type of like a lot of times you're like, oh sweet, the board wipe. It's okay because all my values in my graveyard. It's like, well, this like
wish they
really.
hadn't printed this thing.
Yeah, I wish this card didn't exist. Guess I was supposed to play Planeswalkers. Too bad they don't print those anymore.
Yeah.
Anyway, Jeff, um, this is I feel fully pre-gamed for this set. Very excited,
Yes. Cool
and
set.
yeah, we'll see how it plays because it looks pretty sick. But with that, let's go to last call. Let's talk about the beer we drank this evening, which is Express Brewing's Easy Drinking Blonde. So we're gonna rate this beer on a scale from bronze to mythic, just like the tiers in Arena. Though this has nothing to do with what tier you are in currently, so don't feel bad. Like we're not talking about tiers in like a negative way. It's just a fun way to rate different beers. So
Exactly.
it's all fun. Everybody's in a different tier at a different time. So you shouldn't feel bad when we say that bronze beers are trash. They're horrible. They're so disgusting. You can't even drink them. You have to spit them out and like pour them on the ground.
Yeah. Silver beers are just boring or
Hmm.
bad. So like, poorly made craft beers or macro brews.
Yeah. Gold beers are fine, but you won't really drink them that often.
Platinum, solid beers. You drink them
Hmm.
again.
Diamond beers are exceptional. You like them a lot and you show them to your friends.
And Mythic, these are the best of the best. These are the beers that you are recommending to anyone who will listen. It's your favorite beers?
Yeah. So Jeff, I do have a question. Did you try this before this episode? Have you had one before? Okay.
I did, yeah. And then I was like, you know what? We should do it on air.
Because
And I was like, I wish I hadn't had that one before,
well, it's
but
so
I did.
interesting because um mine tasted very different to what I thought it was going to taste
Yeah.
like. Um I I didn't think I I didn't I it tasted so much sourer than I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I-
it's blonde. They got
it's
that part right.
it looks blonde. Yeah.
Yeah, in color.
In color.
Um, Easy drinking?
No. That's pretty hard that it misses on the easy drinking. That's like the name. Um
Yeah. Well, okay, so it is only 4.3%. So
yes.
maybe we can say it's easy drinking on that. Like I really
Okay,
want to
sure.
like it because it's
I want to
cheap.
I want to like it too because it's also cheap. I do think it's really interesting. It's not
Hmm.
anything of what I thought it was. I could definitely drink this again.
Yeah.
Um but I'm going to consider it like a sour light. Like this is not the type of easy drinking. You can't give this to your dad. Do you know what I mean?
Oh no, my dad would hate this.
No. Like I can't give this to anyone who prefers like light ales or pilsners or anything like that. Like that usually you're like, okay, a blonde ale, that'll you'll survive.
Yeah.
You can't give this to that person. Um
Yeah. And I was hoping for that
yeah.
because I just like an ale, just an ale.
Yeah.
Because nobody makes that. Just make an ale. Doesn't have to be
Hmm.
an IPA. Doesn't have to be a triple IPA,
Whatever.
double
Yeah, yeah.
dry hop.
Just like
Just
a
make an
nice
ale.
ale. Um
And so I was pretty excited about this. It doesn't really taste like that.
no. But I
Um,
don't think it tastes bad.
not bad. It's not bad.
Just so different than what I thought. Um
Yeah.
and I think that a lot of the people ordering it on Instagram will not like it because
Yeah.
it's not what they thought it was going to be. It's closer
Yeah, I'm
to a
a bit
beer.
concerned about that as well, right?
Yeah.
Like I thought the plan was we'll sell people
Hmm.
Molson Canadian or Coors Light or whatever that they get on board and then we can make more and we
Hmm.
can diversify and didn't quite do that. They promise that and then it doesn't quite taste
Yeah.
that way. So I'm worried that yeah, the people who are buying it are
That.
because this is even cheaper than Coors Light, right? Like if
Yeah.
you're gonna go to the LCBO and buy Coors Light, it's more expensive than this.
Hmm.
So there will be that fan base that's
Hmm.
like, all right, well, I'm not a beer guy.
Hmm.
This is just the cheapest beer I can get or whatever.
And they'll,
And
but
it
that
says
person,
it's called easy drinking blonde. And here we
but
go.
to be fair, that person is probably the same person who's like, I'm just trying to get the cheapest, most alcoholic beer as possible. And this one would
Yeah,
not fit their bill, right?
fair. Yeah.
So I am struggling to think whether I would rather just get a Budweiser. Do you think, like, if I wanted to have a bunch of beer that's just like this beer, plain just beer,
Hmm.
if I would just get something else?
Yeah. So it's probably like an extra dollar, whatever. I
Yeah.
don't know exactly, but an extra dollar to get Budweiser, right? Like 350.
Per beer.
That's
Yeah.
per tall can. So it's like an extra
Uh,
40%.
that's true. I don't know if I'd want to drink this over and over and over again a ton.
Yeah,
I'll definitely drink it again, but
that
I
is.
don't know
For
when.
me, like I took the first sip and I was like, oh, we should have done this on the show. And then I was like, it's cold though.
Yeah,
For me,
it's
it's cold.
I think it's like gold.
I wanted to give it platinum.
Yeah.
Like that's what I was when I ordered this, I was thinking in arena regulars terms. I'm like, yo, if
Mhm.
it's platinum, I'm ecstatic.
Yeah, this is fantastic.
And then I took a sip and I was like, oh, it's gold. And I didn't decide in my mind ahead of time how I feel
Mhm.
if it's gold.
Yeah. I I'm wondering because I'm on this weird fence between like is it gold or silver? I almost want to give it silver just to
Yeah, if that's where you're at, then you shouldn't order this, right? Like for me, it
yeah,
was like if it's platinum, I'm sold.
sold.
I won't drink anything else. I'll
Yeah,
just
I'll
get
just
rid of
get the
this for
yeah.
250 again. That's fine.
Mhm.
Um, it to me, it's gold. I think price is like factoring into my brain there,
It's true
but
because
still,
I
like,
did not purchase this, so I also know that that is a thing that seeps in.
where it's just like, man, I just want to like it,
But
but
also, I live so close to Bellwoods that like their beer's so expensive that something super cheap would be really nice
yeah, you
because
could
I could
have
get
that perfect balance of
yeah,
if you had your platinum like cheap beer and then you have your mythic expensive beer, like
hmm
you don't need anything
yeah.
else. Alas, alas,
Alas,
was not meant to be.
it was not meant to be. I do think for me it's probably a silver just because it's like I am thinking about picking up silver beers instead of it, so
That's fair.
that's
Yeah.
it lives there. But I'm really happy I tried it though, so now I know.
Hmm.
Good thing we're not sponsored by this beer.
Yeah.
No, we really aren't sponsored. Um, anyway, Jeff, let's close it out. It's been a long episode. But yeah, anyway, it's time for closing time. So you can always reach us at Arena Regulars on Twitter and Instagram.
You may also find us on Arena itself. We go by Arena Regulars Podcast.
If you want to talk to me personally, you can find me at Zulberg. That is Zeulberg on Twitter and Instagram. But Jeff, where can they find you?
Best place is on our Discord channel. I go by Regular Jeff, the Discord channel. We have lots of fun discussions, deck lists, sharing
Mhm.
wins, trophies, bad beats. It's a great place. Link should be in the show notes.
It sure is. Also, please leave us a review on Apple Podcast. Follow us on Spotify. Leave us a review there as well as going to our YouTube channel. Give us a comment on one of our videos. Like us, subscribe, all those different things. Um, I know you hear this a lot from a lot of different people, but it actually helps our like SEO a ton if you do any of those things. So if it doesn't mean that much to you and it's just free, it really helps us out so much. So please do all that stuff. This has been the Arena Regulars.
Reminding you to pick the rare lands in your draft, but like not all the rare lands, just the good ones.
Good night.
All right, that's fine.